how the gaming industry is building a future for inclusiveness and equality. How are investors playing a critical role in growing a future where we all want to be a part of? On this episode of the Gaming Mastermind series, we'll be unpacking topics like social issues and investor insights from the global leaders defining the industry. This is episode 16 of our Crowdcreate Mastermind series, where we bring the most influential thought leaders each week to share their insights and what they are seeing in the industry.
Welcome to the Crowdcreate Mastermind. The purpose of this mastermind is really to bring together the community and leverage what we call the wisdom of the crowds. You're all thought leaders here in the eSports and gaming industry. The format of these masterminds is really to bring attention to your work, build some awesome connections, and give value to others. These masterminds are typically an hour long. We go around the room 1 minute each and just kind of share who you are, what you're working on, what do you see as the biggest opportunities in the space. And then we have some hot topics and trending, questions that the audience has submitted prior, and they'd love to hear your insights as thought leaders on these. So, Ivan.
Yeah, I'll just kick it off just to show the format. My name is Ivan. I'm one of the co-founders here at Crowdcreate. Well, what am I working on? Building more thought leadership pieces together with experts, because there's so much misinformation and so many people, sitting behind computers trying to learn what's the next big thing. So this is really exciting to me. What are the biggest opportunities I'm seeing right now in the gaming community? I'm from the blockchain world, so I see a lot of connections between NFT assets, digitization, and also a DeFi economy growing around gaming. So those are the things I'm excited about.
Cool. And Gayle, would love for you to go first, a returning panelist.
Oh gosh, okay. So Gayle, Dickie, CEO, founder, Gamer World News. I really like to think of myself as more of an executive producer, creator, but we are a premium news service that provides eSports, professional, competitive, and casual game news around the world. We are not a destination web news source, but a provider of news through syndication, licensing, and white labeling of news, to all the various countries around the world. I'm going to talk about what I'm working on too. Yeah, I'm going to go right through this, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So what we're working on right now is pretty exciting in terms of the kid realm with Gamer World Kids and Gamer World Espanol. And it's been amazing to see over 250 kids audition. And honestly, the mom in me, it makes me cry to say no to some of these kids that are really talented and extremely bright when it comes to the gamer world. And we're also really interested in getting involved in a more female-focused game space because I think the opportunities are there. So I'm really, really excited about the female audience and the exploding mobile growth for me with, I'm sure you guys know, but 600 million players estimated into next year for the United States. And I just think it's a transformative time even though we saw the pandemic come and people were like, everyone's home playing games. I think people were home playing games before that, but now it's just solidified, and I think it's going to keep revving up and keep going. And I'm one of those people that don't believe that just because the pandemic maybe slows down, the gaming takes a dive. Sorry, the hazards of I think that the game space will just continue to grow, and I watch all the various game publishers and all that, and I'm fascinated daily by the growth and the expectation of what's going to happen. And just one quick example with Take-Two and StarAtlas coming on last week, talking about 93 new titles coming on. So I think it's an exciting time, but I felt that way 5 years ago. So that's where we are.
Thanks, Gayle, for the introduction. And we are also putting links to everyone's bio in the chat, and there will be questions from the audience that they typically ask, so feel free to engage. Judy Johnson, would love for you to go next. A lot of people wanted to meet you and also respect you as a female in a high position at such a well-respected company. So,
well, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Judy Johnson. I'm a Director of Gaming and Gaming Strategy at HP. HP creates the Omen gaming products. Omen is one of the fastest growing gaming OEMs in the world. And we make notebooks, desktops, displays, accessories, software, services. And we were working right now on trying to make everything we put out a great gaming experience. So on our notebooks, we want to have more power, less heat, let you play more, let you be more comfortable. Our headsets, being able to have a headset that's comfortable longer, we even have cooling headsets that keep your ears cool while you play. Our displays have, customizable crosshair functionality so that instead of taking a marker and putting your X on your screen anymore, you actually can dynamically create this. But as everybody knows, gaming is happening on all devices, not just great gaming devices. We have as much gaming happening on our consumer PCs, on our line of PCs that are not to gaming. And so what we want to do is we're working on creating great gaming experiences regardless of your device. Making sure that you have access to your games in one place. You have access to game enhancing images, game enhancing opportunities. You get rewarded for playing. I'm most excited about 5G and what it's going to bring to the world of gaming, because I think 5G brings us opportunities that didn't exist before. I think cloud gaming is becoming more and more of a reality as we get to 5G. I don't want to tell you the number of people that were on our low-end devices that were playing Cyberpunk when it came out, right? They were looking for opportunities to play things on all devices. And I think as you start having 5G and especially, edge computing 5G, you have the ability to offset a lot of the power that's needed and run gaming, not just on a great gaming enthusiast device, but on any device. So I'm looking forward to, because gaming is getting not only bigger, as Gayle said, every day, it's getting more mainstream every day. We're seeing more and more users come in, and we want to make that opportunity available. And I'm also excited. I was excited when I heard Gayle's involvement in female-focused activities, because I think that's also an area that we see a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity. If you ask me, I did a high school panel not that long ago, and one of the biggest issues is the toxicity in gaming. And one of the things that I'd love to see us all work together and to be able to create an environment where anybody can come and play and have a good time without having to feel like the environment is bullying them or it's not a great environment, because we can do that. There's no reason it has to be the environment, a toxic environment. So, and I'm looking to hear from the community. Like, how do we make our stuff better, and how do we work with more experiences to bring more integrated experiences to our users? So thank you.
That's great, Judy. Thank you. And Ed, you've been in the gaming industry and you have a piece of history, so maybe I would love for you to go next.
Yeah, I like to put something behind me that's even older than me. Well, almost. Yeah, these are some of the very first commercial arcade machines ever. Actually, this is the very first computer space, 1971. So, yeah, game industry has been around a long time. These days it's great to see how well the game industry is doing. Before I get into that, just who I am. My name's Ed Fries. I was the vice president running the gaming business at Microsoft during the launch of the original Xbox. These days I run a venture firm called One Up Ventures. And what we do, we're really about creating a community of game developers. So the fund is set up to invest in 50 game developers around North America and Europe. And we connect the founders really tightly together so that they can help and support each other to be successful. Diversity is something I think is really important to the game industry's continued growth as well. And so that's something we really try to take into account when we make the investments. We go out of our way to find diverse founders around the world. We made 20 investments so far, on our way to making 50 in 4 years. We're about to have our 2-year anniversary, so we're almost on target. We only invest in video game developers. We don't do tools or platforms or eSports or technologies. So if they're video game developers, please feel free to send them my way. Otherwise, I'll just immediately say no. So anyway, that's what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, just in general about the game business, it's an incredible time. I mean, the video game business was the fastest growing media business in the world pre-pandemic. It was growing 10% year over year. This last year, it looks like it grew, maybe as much as 25%. So very soon, maybe in the next year or two, we will be the largest media business in the world and the fastest growing. And so, games have won. I mean, in the old days, we dreamed about everybody being a gamer and games being everywhere, and we're really on the cusp of that being true, and that's really exciting for me.
That's great, Ed. And very talented video game developer here actually is Michael Wagner with StarAtlas. And would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I'm not so much a game developer myself, but work with some great game developers. But yeah, so I'm Michael Wagner, CEO, co-founder of StarAtlas. I've spent the last 9 years of my life fully immersed in all things Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, have co-founded and launched several companies, including Multi-Chain Ventures, which is a decentralized financial ecosystem for the legal cannabis industry, essentially providing financial services to that industry that is underserved for banking and electronic payments. But more recently, in mid 2020, conceptualized this game idea of StarAtlas. We're hitting probably a lot of the key buzzwords that are popular out there right now, including our kind of core principle of AAA space exploration grand strategy game. We couple that with financial incentives delivered through various blockchain mechanics, including true self-sovereign ownership of those assets by players via NFTs or non-fungible tokens. The currencies in the game are also crypto native, which is to say they can essentially transcend the game universe and be used for true play to earn style gamification for the players. And then, extending it out onto what we see as really a long tail opportunity. And one of the things I'm most interested about is the metaverse concept itself. For those of us that sit in on Zoom calls all day, you're probably also sitting in on Clubhouse conversations in between those calls. I know I constantly have it on in the background, even if I'm working, and just kind of multitasking behind that. The metaverse itself is somewhat controversial, but we really see a big opportunity to deliver an alternative lifestyle and a way for people to connect in this virtual world through not only the economies that we create associated with cryptocurrency, but just the opportunities of experiences that we can deliver in the metaverse. So that's it. I mean, that's what we've been focused on now really for the last 8 months, and things are moving forward quickly, and there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around what we're building.
Love it. Thanks, Michael. And NFTs are something we're going to be discussing later as one of the topics that a lot of people want to hear your insights on. But Trace, would love to have you go next.
Yeah, so personally, I grew up in the gaming industry. My parents had a PR agency and helped launch Doom, Midway Games. They handled all communications for Sony and IBM. So I was in a lot of those early commercials, like the kid in the background playing games. So that's what I grew up with, and probably missed becoming a professional sports gamer by probably 10, 15 years, unfortunately. But now I'm on the investing side. So I'm an angel investor. New York Venture Partners is my partner and I. We have 57 direct investments. I've invested in about 30 of them myself personally, usually 50 to 100,000 in pre-seed and seed startups. We know what we don't invest in, so we're opportunistic. No fintech, no bio, no health, no education, no insurance or crypto. So don't worry, we still find at least one new investment every month. We made 16 investments in 2020. We started dabbling a little bit in eSports with our first investment in GameCo, which was bringing esports and gaming to Vegas and similar to those gaming arcade games. Our second investment was in Thrive Fantasy, which is bringing prop betting to sports and esports as well. And our third investment that will be announced soon is called Kidis, which is bringing child safety, making sure that you're aware of what your children are listening to online, or if they're being bullied on the Xbox, or divulging any sensitive information, and to protect them from potential predators. So those are our three investments in the space. As I mentioned, I just sent One Up Ventures to a game developer studio this morning after I heard you speak. So hopefully you can help out with them, because I don't know how to evaluate that. And I'm still getting at least one new potential investment for esports every week. So it's from influencers managing the Twitch online streaming, to gaming companies and producers, to new forms of collaboration and how to kind of monetize your streaming and better matchmaking online.
That's awesome. Thanks, Trace. And be a good segue into Miguel, founder at United States Esports Association.
Hi, My name is Miguel Gayle, and I usually like to introduce myself first as a father, a husband, passionate learner, and a terrible but passionate gamer. And I'm also the founder of the United States eSports Association, also a member of the Commission of Innovation Technology for the Global Esports Federation. Also sitting on the advisory board for Gamers Outreach. It's a fantastic charity on the gaming space. And I'm also the COO of a nascent esports organization or esports and gaming organization called Warriors International. As far as what I'm most excited about, I'm really excited as a recreational and grassroots esports advocate. Really excited about building or helping build the infrastructure for the bottom 99 of the pyramid in the world of gaming and esports. We know that esports is very top heavy right now, but as you dive down to the bottom of that pyramid, there's a lot of infrastructure to be built out there. I'm personally doing that on two fronts, on the nonprofit side and the for-profit side. So that's essentially what keeps me really excited, is to really bring down, that infrastructure to actually build a robust ecosystem, especially on the esports side, especially on the grassroots level, to actually make it sustainable and grow over time. We all know gaming is part of the entertainment industry, but at the same time, esports is part of gaming. So how do we actually keep pushing that gaming? Very much aligned with a lot of the things that Gayle and Judy said. No to toxicity for sure. Our mission from the United States Esports Association is simply foster the growth of recreational esports in the US. And our three vertical pillars that we use for that are recreational leagues, education, and diversity and inclusion. So if there's anything I can ask from anybody here is, keep being active, keep being out there, help us participate. There's a lot of programs that we're working on together. And I'm actually later on, when it's time to chat and have a deeper conversation, really looking forward to ask a few questions to Judy specifically from a hardware side and a few other members. But that's in a nutshell who I am.
Awesome. Thanks, Miguel. And David, would love to hear your insights from the influencer world. A lot of people are asking. So.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about the bottom 99 of the pyramid because I focus on the top a little bit. So I'm David Huntzinger. I lead the gaming team here at WME. We're one of the largest traditional talent agencies in the world, but our gaming group does a few different things. So the way I describe it is kind of like three different pillars, and all of them focus around marrying the worlds of traditional entertainment with gaming and esports. So number one, first and foremost, we represent talent that come out of the gaming space. So whether those are YouTubers, Twitch streamers, streamers off of other platforms or esports stars, we will work like we do with any other talent, like we do with The Rock, like we do with Matt Damon, like we do with Drake. We will create a 360 business around that talent where it's not just their branding and endorsement deals, it's also they want to put together an event. They want to put together like a graphic novel or a book. They want to put together a TV show or get into hosting. We'll really craft a kind of roadmap to get them some much bigger steps into the traditional entertainment world than they could ever make on their own. Kind of on the inverse, we will also kind of do the opposite with our traditional talent. So when we have talent like a Thomas Middleditch or a Kane Brown or a Ronda Rousey who are very passionate about the gaming world and want to build a business in that world, we help them kind of craft how to kind of make those organic inroads, because as we all know, like, it's kind of exhausting to say, but the buzzword that everyone always throws around is authenticity within gaming. And that's so true with the audience and the consumer base here. So finding the really kind of clean, authentic touch points to help a traditional talent build a business that means something in the gaming world, whether that's helping them get a stream set up, whether that's kind of very tasteful brand alignments or otherwise, will help craft what that looks like. So we bring gamers into traditional entertainment, we bring traditional entertainers into gaming. And then, the third little pillar that we really sit across is also just IP development. So in a lot of cases, we will work with developers if they have strong intellectual property to bring those and translate them into other mediums. For example, taking like a really quality indie game IP and helping put together like a production company and a writer, take that out and sell that into television. And I think that there's a huge opportunity there that's going to be coming up. If you look at how the TV industry has evolved over the last 20 years, a lot of the last decade or so has been defined by Marvel and comic book heroes, and a lot of that's getting played out. So I think that there is opportunity that's going to come for a lot more game IP specifically. So the team and I sit across a number of different things, have our hand in a number of different areas, and it's fun because I think to answer the question about where I see a lot of opportunity and what we're excited about, one of those areas is talent-driven businesses, talent-driven ventures. You're seeing this all across the digital space. You know, Mr. Beast put out that burger joint that kind of went live in the past month. I think that there's so much opportunity for talent, especially gaming talent, to start building businesses that they're not just advocating for, but they own and they can scale. And you know, whether that's something that's like a consumer product or some of my talent, like the Markipliers of the world, they're so good at telling stories about themselves playing games that they also have the creative juice to start actually thinking through how a game should come together. And so we've already started pairing some of our talent with developers in order to create their own bespoke games that they're, you know, launching and you know, using those to launch almost their own kind of mini publishing engines. So a number of things here to talk about, but excited to be here.
That's great, David. We need to unpack that later on in the discussion. George, would love for you to go next, and you're educating the future generations of esports though.
Yeah, so I'm an eSports instructor at Mount Royal University in Canada. So I teach eSports operations in the eSports management certificate. I also own a company as well, which specializes in developing and implementing eSports curriculum within the educational setting. So we work with districts and institutions around the globe, a lot in North America right now, in really facilitating the learning of individuals through the use of gaming. A lot of the skills which you obtain and you acquire through gaming are transferable into the real life space and into the real life industry as well, which I think a lot of administrators and superintendents don't necessarily know. So we work with them to break down those barriers and really understand what the industry as a whole has to offer, because it's a very daunting area for any educator, no matter where they are, whether they have any industry knowledge or not. It's a very daunting area to try and pursue something like this. So we try and cover, in the curriculum that we offer, we try and cover a lot of different points and areas. So video production, health, well-being, coaching, events, a lot of different areas that can integrate into the current CTE infrastructure, which is in the US, but also into the current curriculum, as whether it's in the US, in Europe, in Canada. So we work a lot on that, and we work very much with institutions throughout the whole process. So we work with them at the start and developing, creating, and maybe running pilots with that. We work with the teachers during that, so providing them with guest speakers, different ways for industry to engage. And then really at the end of that as well, we're making sure that we're constantly improving what we're getting in terms of, we want to work with industry. Our whole objective is to create that pipeline for the next generation, whether it's into industry, in the esports industry, or whether it's into the actual industries that are already going on, such as marketing or events. And that's really where we come in and what we mainly focus on. And then the area in which I'm really interested in, obviously you can tell, is education, but that's also from the development of it and where it's going to go in the future, because there's a lot of eyes from actually within the esports industry right now, keeping their eye on esports and K through 12 and seeing the direction in which that's going, and really how the pipeline develops in the next few years and what the direction individuals aim to take that in, because there's many different ways and directions in which it can go if it's given the correct nurturing of individuals and the support which they require.
George, thank you so much. And those are some great points. You mentioned K through 12 and that trajectory of where, you know, the younger generation is going to be. Something I brought up in the call earlier was a lot of people are peeking into gaming, not even because, they're into gaming, but they're starting to buy work from home devices that are in the gaming space. So a lot of people are looking in. And one thing I do want to talk about is the community, the gaming community. And many of you guys talked about it. How do we create positivity, especially these are the younger generation and they're going to grow up and they're going to become the leaders of the gaming community. But how do we foster that intentionally? I wanted to hear from some of the panelists. And this was a question brought up by the community at large because a lot of people are asking.
I have some comments on this. Maybe not so specific to the community at large, but just by way of kind of anecdotal evidence of what we're seeing with players that are interested in joining our game at StarAtlas. And that is really through this play to earn model and the empowerment of, virtually everyone, but a lot of these developing nations, we're seeing guilds and clans collectively form within our game universe so that they can collaborate and pool their resources and actually, determine strategies that allow them to extract more value out of the game. We saw, of course, over the course of 2020 with COVID, a lot of people were, out of work, unable to generate income. And there were actually opportunities created across the blockchain universe and games that are developed within the crypto space that permitted these players to actually earn substantially more than they were earning in their base wages. In some cases, 3 or 4 times more than they would earn at a traditional job. And what's better than that? Being able to go play a game, get the entertainment value out of it, enjoy your time, and at the same time extract real world revenue from that. So again, in terms of forming community, we are seeing big communities form geographically, just related to how these people can pool resources, enable other people within their community to join their teams. We are also seeing things like clan leaders that possess a substantial amount of resources in game that will lend those resources out to other players that maybe don't have the financial ability to purchase them themselves. Wow. And through time, those new players are able to generate resources and then assist others. So I just think it's a really cool effect and kind of ripple effect through the community that is enabled through this play to earn.
Gayle, I'd love to hear from you. I know in the last mastermind, you mentioned that looking for games with positive role models. And what are you seeing as the gaming community is trying to be intentional with this?
Well, I actually think, off of Judy's point, in terms of 5G, I think we're going to see a lot more mobile facing audiences that kind of transcend to even, besides we play on console, we play on, PC and we play on mobile. I think we're going to see a lot more I'm just convinced we're going to see a lot more female influence in the game space. I think it's not because I'm a girl, but I just think I see it as an overlapping thing where it's kind of been ignored. And when I read all the statistics, I'm like, why aren't we concentrating on this? And so for me, it's kind of one of my items that I like to really keep tabs on in terms of, all the games and the not only the top 10, but some of the indie games that, the fast games, the puzzle games, et cetera, and the numbers of kids and females that play, because we've always been caught up in the eSports professional side. And I think now we've kind of settled in and we look at it and go, okay, well, that's a vertical. And, it's going to take some years, I think, before, we're all wearing somebody's jersey on their back. But I think for me, the biggest insight is really paying close attention, ear to the ground on what works for females, what works for kids, and how to kind of combine these consoles and the PCs and the mobile verticals within all of that. I think that, like I said, I think that if you start paying attention to that and look at it, you'll see that market is bigger than you ever imagined. So that's kind of where we're focusing right now, besides the kids,
So we want to learn about this industry. And that's why we invested in esports team. This was like 2 or 3 years ago when I guess it was just starting to heat up. And it got us a lot of data about the players and, like a real sports athlete, who they look up to and who they admire. And so a lot of, I think, the inclusiveness is also who the players are. And so that taught us a lot. And then also the analytics, kind of where the money is coming from, that most of the money is in the publisher's hands. They control everything. And so from our investment thesis, you have to sell right to the Microsofts, to the Sonys, and get them on board. The publishers, the Riots, they control the narrative. So it was a little bit difficult for us to keep investing. And to this exact point, I play a lot of Warzone online, and it's horrible what people are saying to each other. And so when we came across this investment in Kidis, we wanted the industry to be more inclusive. I know there's a lot of young kids I play with. I try and be as nice as possible. And so I think it's also, bullying is a big problem. It's something that takes place in person in schools. It takes place online. And that was our investment thesis behind Kidis, is that it will monitor this, so that the kids are aware of what's happening in real time if they're too young, but also parents, because the kids will go to the parents, they'll act differently. And it's a difficult conversation that parents have to have with their kids, or maybe their kids have with their parents. And so I think that is part of the problem. And hopefully our investment won't be the solution, but will get us to a more inclusive, safer environment.
Can I just ask a question? I just want to ask a quick question because it made me think of something, Trace. I'm wondering, I've always wondered this, and maybe it would get shot down, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there. I've always wondered why we didn't create something that was, school friendly from 17, 6 to 17, where girls just play with girls and boys just play with boys. And then they take a pledge at 17 about this whole bullying thing, because I get inquiries all the time from moms, like, what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do. My feeling was, not to say that girls don't bully girls, because they do, but at least it's more of a horrible word, segregated, vertical, where, you know what, you get to play with these girls. You have to play 3 years and not have an incident. And then you can go, and I just feel like there's some, and I was thinking about you, Miguel, it seems like there could be some part of this in terms of an association where you go, look, we're going to set these guidelines. You play with girls play with girls, 6 through 9. And then, we know that the ages, 10 through 13, and then 14 through 17. And you keep them apart, because I have adult friends that are on, Quest, and they get in a room and they're with like an 8-year-old, and the 8-year-old is bullying the adult because they don't know, and he hears this little voice and he's like, how old are you? So it's just a thought about taking it. And it was years ago, and I thought, I don't understand why we just, when I was in school, you played girls volleyball. I didn't play with the guys, but I'm old. I mean, that's what we did. I'm just wondering, and I throw it out there, do you think there's a world we could create something, maybe Miguel with your help, and maybe Judy, because you have such a, overall position that would work for that bullying, topic?
Yeah, and I'll jump in, and thank you for the segue, Gayle. And I think this is a very huge and big onion to start peeling side by side. But I think there's, we're in this transitional time where we're really shifting or going from an analog culture to a digital culture. And there's still in this time where you have, those of us, including myself, that have grown up mostly in the analog world and started to learn the digital side of things. And then we have these kids that are so natural on the digital side of things. So I think that's one factor that's playing in here. The other factor is the fact that if you think about esports and gaming from a competitive perspective, and also from a recreational activity a la any intramural sports and the traditional sports, that's what I was referring to at the beginning, where that is the bottom 99 of the pyramid, and that's not being organized at all. If you think about esports competitively, typically just organized at the top level first, the professionals, and then all the infrastructure that goes down from little league's perspective all the way up to get your path to potentially be a competitive esports player. That in reality doesn't exist. And then when you add the factor that you have to break it down by titles, you have to break it down by regions, and you even have to break it down by countries, then you start getting all these different factors. So yes, you're right. There's a lot we have to do. That's exactly our vertical on the recreational leagues. that we want to start working with that. What happens is that we all need to work together, right? And that's the function that we're taking as association, is trying to convene all the parts to say, okay, let's try to do this. But what happens is, for example, we have to remember esports is equivalent to sports. So the way that I group the ages and the categories, in a way, if I say for a Rocket League, will be totally different than for a League of Legends, or totally different than for another title. So we have to start building that together, and slowly but surely we're trying to, obviously COVID threw a wrench on everyone, but that's how we start with it. We start saying, here's some guidelines, and then we want, the help, and making more of an open conversation, and convening and inviting people to participate, more as to say, here's the USCA, and we say it's this way, because that's not going to work, right? And we know that in the gaming industry, it doesn't work that way. So this, I'm so glad you brought that up, Gayle, because we've been trying to do that. We have several ideas how to do it. We have a great example of several traditional sports that have that development process out there. We actually have an initiative that we're starting, which is to say, how do we put together a development plan? Kind of like to say, if you're from an 8-year-old all the way to a 20-year-old, or whenever you graduate college, this is kind of like how you can get developed into be a competitive game player. And that's not necessarily only from a gaming perspective, that is from a balance side of things. Like, you have to eat well, you have to sleep well, you have to, in order for you to be able to perform, right? When you're a 7-year-old, like, I'll take it from my daughter. My daughter's a 6-year-old trying to play tennis. They don't care of how does she grab the racket or how does she bounce the ball. Their care right now is that she enjoys the experience. When she goes someplace, to have fun. And then eventually they start developing all the way through. So we need to put that together, and we're kind of have a couple of initiatives out there, but it requires a lot of help, especially being a nonprofit. We need players in the industry to actually come in and help us actually go and develop that. So offline, I'll invite any of you guys to join, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation to tell you more what we're trying to do.
Thanks, Miguel. It's interesting about bullying in the limelight, because I don't know if you watch that show Cobra Kai on Netflix. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And the whole show is about, the premise is about bullying, and really, it's great, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if I could comment for a minute on this, there's decades of experience building communities in massively multiplayer online games, MMOs. And people who set out to make those, they know that, and they put a lot of effort into setting community rules and standards, and having enforcement mechanisms and things like that. But with digital technology today, it's actually really easy for anybody to just build a community, and they don't even realize they're building a community sometimes. They'll just connect a bunch of people together so they can all chat or whatever. And this is a problem that's beyond just the gaming business, right? You can look at Twitter or YouTube or Facebook over the last few years, and see what can happen if you build a community without laws, and without rules, and without enforcement mechanisms. And so I think it is a transitional period, as Miguel said, and I think we need to realize that whenever we create a place for people to communicate, we also have to create a set of rules, a culture that we want to build there, and an enforcement mechanism around that culture. And say, okay, I'm just going to make a shooter game. It's not an MMO, but I'll let it make it so that people can play together. Okay, great. And I'm going to make it so people can talk. And then that's at that point you're going to have problems unless you build the proper systems around that to make it a good place for everyone to be in. I think it's just human nature. I mean, it really goes back thousands of years to having laws around, groups of people that get together. So
I'm just going to expand a little, because we look at this quite a bit. One of the biggest things that we want to do is a safe environment with our products, but there's a balance, because gamers are 8 and gamers are 55, and you can't create the same set of rules for those users, or you play with your friends and you're different than when you play with people you don't know. And I think a lot of it's going to have to be the industry itself has to look really hard at this. We look hard now about what influencers we use, what partners we have. Not that we don't want people to game on all our devices and to do what, play the way you want to play, but where we going to put our money and our investments are going to be things that reflect our brand. And as you put it, the culture that you want to build, that's where we're going to put our money into the products that are helping build the culture that we want to build.
Yeah, something which I wanted to really add from the education side here is, one, I think partially this as well is really setting the foundation early, right? Because we want to go on is really, we want to set it now of how we want to go on, in terms of the way in which we want people to perceive gaming, and the whole culture, as Ed's been saying, and has really been passed really through this whole panel. And also in terms of that, like that's approach in terms of trying to bring more diversity into the industry, whether it's ethnicity, race or gender or anything like that. That's another major point. But also something which Miguel stated in terms of not just having one governing body that says, okay, yeah, it's this way or the highway. Whenever we work with institutions, we really want to help them understand the industry. It's not really about saying, okay, yeah, you've got to do it this way and you've been doing education wrong, because what position are we in to really say that? They are the experts within their institution, within their district. They understand their kids and their students more than anyone else. So what right do we have to say in terms of, okay, yeah, we're completely ripping this out and you have to do this? We want to work with them. And I think that's obviously something which is very key in terms of everyone here is actually working together in order to build that pipeline and build that infrastructure. Yes, we've come a long way, but there is still a long, long journey to go in order to get where we all want to go. And I think that's the period that we're in right now. We are currently building that boat or building that ship in theory, but there's obviously a lot more individuals that need to work collaboratively and work together towards that end goal of what we want to achieve, rather than all working individually.
Awesome point. Yeah. So I also wanted to mention it's, it was mentioned a few times, but, investing in the products and the services and the things that you want to see in the future for gaming. And that's actually why Trace and Ed, I love the fact that the both of you are from the gaming world. You're even in the background of some gaming commercials, but Ed, you're literally sitting in front of the history of what gaming used to be. So I do want to kind of switch gears and kind of talk about a lot of the community is asking this. Hey, there's a lot of interest to do more inclusive games or less bullying, but I kind of want to move that to how are people investing and how are they valuing projects to put their money in? And I know even on HP side, HP even has a venture side. Like, what are the initiatives on the investing side that you're seeing that is reinforcing this?
I mean, one thing is, just investing in diversity just makes good business sense. So it's not just about being a good social thing to do. I mean, if you look at the game business today, there's it's a very competitive business, right? And, fighting over the white male gamers, there's plenty of products fighting in that market, but if we want to grow the business, we need to make games for everyone. And the right people to make those games are people who reflect their audience. I got a pitch yesterday, actually, from a group that was making a game for girls. And I pulled up their team slide and they were all guys. And I just immediately said no, because that's not going to work. We need a more diverse creator culture to create the products that are going to reach authentically a more diverse audience. And that's the the blue ocean. That's where we can grow the business and create products that aren't having to fight with so many other games in the market. So I just think it makes good business sense to invest there.
And who are some of those exciting projects you are looking at? Because, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, so a couple companies that we've invested in that are really great. Emily Greer, former CEO of Congregate, is running a company called Double Loop Games. They have a mobile game that's going to be coming out relatively soon. Really excited about that company. Jill Wilson, a senior executive from Jam City, is running a new company called Robin Games, also really a great game. We work with, well, there's a company called Elodie with a famous female designer who's an ex-Riot company. I'm not sure how much is public, so I have to be careful about what I say about them, but Elodie is another exciting one for us. So of our first dozen investments, half were female founder or co-founder. So it's important to us.
Sorry guys, I'd like to jump in and ask maybe a question related to this, but some ideas that we had in mind, at least from the USCA side, United States Esports Association, is one of the grant funds idea that we were thinking about is creating a grant fund where actually the funds can be used exactly for this, to promote new games and games created by probably female and inclusive and younger generation, and use it as a mechanism, as a grant that we can provide from an association perspective. So maybe this is something for Ed and Trace to help us figure out if that would be of interest and how we would do that. And obviously using the vehicle of the nonprofit, the United States Esports Association, to create some sort of little bit of a grant fund there to be used as well.
I'm on the board.
So, sorry, I heard a couple of voices.
Go ahead, Travis. Sorry.
I would think that'd be very helpful, especially as almost like a vetting. I get probably a few dozen pitches a day, and so esports is only a small subset of what we're kind of looking at. It's more, you kind of know it when you see it as we dive into it. So if you could somehow be our vetted deal flow and make sure it's diverse, you would figure out the team early on at pre-seed and seed is worthwhile. They have the experience and this is a good idea and has the VC scale, and send it our way. That would definitely be really helpful.
And I was going to mention the IGDA Foundation, International Game Developers Association Foundation. I'd be happy to connect you with them. I'm one of the board members there. They do a whole series of programs around diversity in game development. And they're a 501c3, so it's a place you can make a tax-deductible donation that goes to supporting diverse creators in the gaming community.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely we'll follow up with you guys offline.
Awesome.
And I think almost everybody on this call is like us, right? Gaming is universal. It's not a US centric thing. We're all global companies here. We're all building things that have to be inclusive, not just a particular country or particular area, but how do we look at it and make sure that our products are diverse to our customer set? And I think Ed put it best, investing in diversity makes good business sense because that's the market. And I think for us at HP, as we look at even our partners, the people that we invest in, our VC companies, are we building, I keep coming back to, are we building the culture and community that we at HP want to be associated with? And that's sort of the first barrier before we go farther with anybody is, does it fit that mold? It could be the best thing in the world, but if it doesn't fit who we think we want to be, we don't move forward.
I want to add on to that as well. And I think one, I would say I'm the odd one in the call right now, purely due to my accent. I'm from across the pond. So I think this kind of like states the global nature of esports, right? And that's really to a certain extent of what we work on in terms of the educational pieces. Esports is global. Why do we want to regionalize it and teach it only in a certain fashion or a certain way? Surely the best way to teach esports is really getting everyone involved on that global perspective, that global angle, because every region and every continent, every country has a different way of doing things and a different way that works best for them. So by integrating and getting different countries to collaborate in terms of the educational setting, it makes the opportunity for students as well so much more rewarding, because you have the opportunity to network with individuals that could be on the other side of the globe from you. And the amount, what that gives an incentive to an individual, and it can really help maybe potentially showcase them that path or the potential career pathway in which they want to take. And that's really, to a certain extent, everyone, which I'm very happy to has been saying, is really everything that we're doing in terms of everyone here is working on a global scale to some level or some extent, and that's what we want to do. We want to. So if any of you obviously are interested in connecting with me and really trying to help in an educational setting, in an educational way, then I'd be more than willing to talk, obviously offline, to really try and help set up that that pipeline, and make it, let's say, more established into the industry, because there's a cycle that needs to happen, not only for the esports industry to continue going, but also for other industries, because then the esports industry can allow for other industries to continue to develop and continue to grow through the use of esports specifically as well.
George, I'm gonna help you here because I'm actually sitting in Spain, so I'm on the other side of the pond as well. Even though most of my career was in the U.S., but I've been actually living here in Spain for the last year, and I've been living myself the whole global aspect, but also regional aspect of esports. And I think what Judy was saying is so true. I myself come from the third world, from Latin America, and I can tell you that there is a flow and there's a rhythm even to technology and to gaming. So because of the different way the technologies comes across countries, I remember growing up when I was a small kid that we still had VHS and Betamax, whilst the first, the countries like the US and Western Europe were already VHS, some of the other countries, developing world or third world countries like mine, we were behind. So that happens today. And that's why you also have some countries that went straight to mobile gaming versus PC and versus consoles, right? So it is so unique and so rich, but at the end of the day, yes, the concept of gaming is universal. It's how you apply it in different regions. And that's so true, whether it's George, you and I know each other from the past as well, but whether that is from how do you apply the educational side of things for a specific country versus the other, but everybody for sure wants to interact because that's the beauty of gaming. So there's so much to unpack there for sure. And like you said, George, being able to have that perspective, it helps so much. And actually that's something, Judy, that I'll say here. I actually want to talk to you for a couple of reasons. But even from a hardware perspective, there's a lot of things that can be done both on the for-profit side and then a non-profit side. So yeah, that's a very interesting subject there.
George, I think you have a very powerful altruistic vision. Would love to connect with you separately as well. I do believe that we, as either game developers or those of us on the panel that are investing in games, have a responsibility to include or embed educational materials alongside the entertainment value of games. Again, speaking more specifically to StarAtlas, we are working on efforts to deliver financial literacy to people that are playing the game through these financial mechanisms that we have built in. So it's a great way to capture attention, especially of younger audiences, because games are just outright fun. And if we can teach at the same time that we provide entertainment, there's huge value there. So we'd love to connect with you separately on that.
Michael, and speaking of connections, we're in the final 5 minutes of this discussion, so I want to be conscious of everyone's time. We are going to be inviting all the speakers into a private Slack group, and there you can continue the discussion and network. We also will have a mastermind in about a month's time for the same community. So love to invite you all back. It looks like we have a lot to unpack even after this. So, but I do wanted to bring up, you mentioned inclusion and diversity from the hardware side. I know Microsoft has been pushing a lot on creating hardware that's extremely inclusive, and they have their even down to the packaging level. But I do want to mention, in the world of influencers who are often becoming the spokesman for industries, not just gaming, how do projects and companies want to work with gaming influencers? I know David's here from the influencers. I'd love to hear from you and what you think.
Well, I think there's probably a few points to make on this. I think like the influencer space has continued to grow, right? So over the last 5 years, especially, it's just kind of exploded. So whether you're a streamer on Twitch, whether you're a YouTuber, there's now almost a niche for any kind of content or any kind of game that you can imagine. So what I think of when I think of the opportunity for influencers, especially in relationship to brands, is that they are one of the best marketing engines that you can imagine in order to actually like touch base in an engaged way with your audience. So you can hyper target, you can hyper focus in a way that you're not going to get through just paid media and a good, you know, e-com plan and making sure that your digital marketing is on point. So I do think that as the space has scaled up, as more influencers have started to grow, brands need to be much more intelligent about how they are crafting a campaign with the talent, right? Because everything now seems somewhat standardized. If you're on Twitch, there are banners that you can have, there are chat bots, there are in-game kind of activations, and there are call outs. So they're fairly standardized ideas, but where you can actually move the needle is when a brand gets really creative. And so sometimes that's about a social cause. And so I think like the themes that we're talking about all apply to the brand and influencer space as well. But I think that if talent can get creative about how they're interacting with a campaign, it not only helps the brand cut through the noise of a crowded marketplace, but then they also get to interact with their audience in a much more meaningful way. And I said at the beginning of the call, authenticity is the buzzword that gets thrown around to the point where I just want to throw up when I hear it. But it's so true in the sense that every talent knows their audience and their community better than anybody. And so when they come up with a creative idea and they can tastefully integrate a brand into that, it helps the brand come across as very organic and natural, but it also then puts them into a good light, and the audience finds themselves cheering for the talent actually getting paid for what they do. So you know, I think that at a high level is what I'm seeing. And I think that the good news is the top talent in the gaming industry are starting to recognize that, right? So I represent a group called OTK. These are influencers like Asmongold, you know, SFan, Ms. Kiff. It's a group off of Twitch. And what they're doing, they collectively came together about 3 months ago and said, we're not going to be an esports team. We're going to be a content collective. And our goal is just going to be creating very, very custom tournaments that invite the community to play along with the talent. So when they have a tournament, like in World of Warcraft, for example, set up a dueling tournament and they invite the actual fans of the stream to participate. And I think that does a couple things. One, it's completely unique and it gives the brands an opportunity to get much more in touch with the audience. But then to the points that we were making earlier about inclusivity and making a positive kind of environment helps bolster some of that too. So I think there's tons of ideas and tons of opportunity. That's one. But yeah, I think that's kind of where my mind goes on that.
Thanks,
If
David,
I
for
may-
your insight.
Are
Miguel,
we out of
before
time?
we're getting
Okay.
close, but before you do that, I do want to correct myself. I said spokesman, I meant to say spokesperson. I mean, in light of all the inclusiveness, I want to make sure that, yeah, even on the words and the vernacular we use. Go ahead, Miguel.
I just want to say something. It may be just idea that we initially have been working on it, but maybe something that, since we have David and Judy here on the phone, maybe something we can think about is, you know, same way that we have, you know, stars in the sports world donating basketball courts to their communities to host basketball tournaments. What if we use, you know, some sort of partnership where we can leverage the USCIS, the nonprofit, but then having talent actually donate hardware. And that's why I'm bringing Judy on here to say, hey, here's X amount of hardware that we can use. And then, you know, talent X, Y, and Z, here's how we want to have you know, people from our community, so underrepresented communities, to participate into gaming. Because a lot of the issue that we have and lose sight of in terms of gaming is also accessibility, but accessibility is actually to having access to the right equipment to play it. There's a lot of communities, not only in the US, but in the world, that don't have access to those equipment. So putting together something like that will be really helpful and meaningful, especially if we target some of those communities from, you know, whichever areas in the country those talents are. And I think that's an idea that I'm more than happy to discuss further if we have the chance.
And Miguel and I are already setting up time to speak, so.
Nice.
Yeah, we are.
Well, thanks everyone. We're coming up on time now for Gaming Mastermind, and to continue the conversation forward, we've launched a private Slack group community of thought leaders like yourself, and truly we believe in the wisdom of the crowds, and you're all doing amazing things, all for the better, you know, of the industry and bringing positivity to everybody. And our goal is to really support all of you